are there athlete profiles? Like, is the person that's very good at producing eccentric forces fast typically not good at producing high force? Like, let's say from an accentuated eccentric, like is are they not good at that piece on the strength side of things? And is that what they need to touch on every now and then more often? Or did you not see patterns within those types of athletes?
I think it's important for us as coaches to build models to make sense or better sense of the complexity that we see every day. So one of the ways in which we do that is to categorize different athletes as different types of movers. And often the risk here is an athlete could be in one category, but maybe right on the edge of that category and another category,
Mhm.
where another athlete in that category could be on the other edge of that category and a category that's totally different. And yet we train both of these athletes similarly because they're in the same category. And this is where it gets really challenging for us. Like we need to allow space for that. Every single athlete that we train is different. They're all different. So some can attenuate massive forces. Some can also attenuate massive forces fast. Some of those people can also concentrically deliver massive forces. And some of those people can also concentrically deliver massive forces fast. And all of the opposite of all of that. So you've got athletes that are literally everywhere. If you've got 100 athletes, they're moving in 100 different ways, delivering force in 100 different ways. So that's a really hard starting spot. It's an
Mm.
impossible starting spot. So we have to start somewhere. And that's where, okay, different people have done it different ways, like a force velocity profile and so on and so forth. And essentially what we end up with is pretty delineated dichotomous things. You know, all right, you're in this category, you're doing this. You're force deficient, so you're going to be working more force. You're velocity deficient, so you're going to be working more velocity. Even though of the 100 people that you may be force deficient or velocity deficient, one could be only just force deficient and one could be massively force deficient and so on and so forth, right? So I much prefer to operate within continuums rather than categories these
Yeah.
days. So when we look at, like James's stuff, and I've contributed to that as much as probably anybody, the four quadrants, which I love. It's incredible. It's extremely, extremely helpful. For anybody who's listening, don't understand what that is. It's based on James Wild's PhD studies. He started his PhD. He just PhD in the teens. He finished it a couple of years back. Started publishing on it in I think 2022, and it's just looking at sort of the kinematic profiles of how athletes sprint. And it's looking at the relationship between ground contact time and flight time, and the relationship between step length and step frequency and velocity. And it places athletes into a category based upon those different relationships. And you could be, for example, somebody who has really long step length. It takes you a long time to create that long step, so that'll put you in one category. On the other end, you might create force really, really fast and be off the ground really, really quickly and have a really short step length. That's another category. But rather than looking at it as these as four separate categories for me now, I think it's more useful to look at it on a continuum. So you're looking at the continuum between step length and step frequency, and that's a single continuum. And you're looking at the continuum between ground contact time and flight time, and that's a single continuum. And I think that way we can be a little bit more accurate with some of the ways in which we use the information to inform our practice. I've totally lost track of what your question was at this point.
It
That was
that
great.
was it. That was great. That was a great. I have a follow up, which will direct it
I don't know
somewhat.
if that answered your question at all,
No,
man. I
no,
apologize, but I
it,
remember there was a question that it related to that, so I just started.
no, it did because it was really just about the question was really about just like where would you put certain athletes and bucket them as everybody in the industry says. Which leads me to my next question. Do you think the athletes that can handle the reflexive eccentrics really well, they're good at that, also handle braking on contact and sprinting a little bit better?
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah. Like so going back to kind of our work prior, like the degree of relatedness between those two things are really, really high, like super duper high
And
for
is it
sure.
a does it help them coordinate? Like I know we've talked about the two mass model. We've talked about the difficulty in coordinating the foot ground interaction. And that's what separates some of the best sprinters in the world from like regular athletes. But do you think it helps them coordinate and do that? Or do you think
No,
that's
I don't think it's a coordinative thing. I don't think it's a qualitative thing at all. I think it's
mm,
strictly quantitative.
interesting? Okay. So gout, probably one of
No.
the future greats. What makes him so if you were just to observe him as a spectator and you watch him run in slow motion, you watch him run in fast motion, you watch him run from the side, the front, the back. What could you infer about his physical capacities by how he runs?
By how he runs or through other means?
Let's say just by how he runs. You have no other means of understanding any of the data around him, but you did have an opportunity to watch him from the front, the side, the back, from the
Mm.
top, whatever angles you need. What could
So
you
we
infer?
can, one of the things that we can infer by watching him, we may not have the specific metrics or the specific ability to study or measure these metrics, but we can infer that he has a significant step length. We can just count steps over 100 meters, and we see that his step length is really long relative to some other elite sprinters.
Mhm,
We can see that he's on and off the ground really quickly. We can see that there's a fairly small degree of hip extension, so the travel of the thigh behind the center of mass is pretty minimal. We can see that the magnitude of the front side lift is ridiculous. Like his knee gets up past his belly button on some steps.
mhm,
We can see that he carries himself extremely tall, that there seems to be very, very minimal um, depression of the center mass through ground contact. And we can see that his joint stiffness around his ankle is extremely, extremely high. So those are the things that we can look at. And we also see that we can see some more qualitative things too, right?
mhm,
Um, we can see that he's really skinny. We can see that seemingly, if you look at the spinal engine um, methodology, not methodology, but kind of look at the spinal engine ability. Let's say that looks really good. Like he seems to be using everything to run fast. He looks extremely coordinated from top to bottom. He's very, very fluid, very, very rhythmical. So all of those things are things that we can infer.
huh,
And want to go deeper on any of that? But this is, but again, like we have to be, sometimes we have to be really careful. Like studying outliers is a really, really important thing.
yeah,
like it's really important for us to understand an outlier. It's really important to understand Ben Johnson. It's really important to understand Usain Bolt. It's really important to understand Gout. But just because of these are outliers for a reason.
Mhm.
They're different than everybody else
Mm,
in this, even in this really, really what you would think is a super homogeneous population, super duper elite sprinters. Is let's say there's 20 on the planet. There's 20 out of 8 billion. They're all really different. And the one who's the most different, Gout, is very different than all the rest of them.
mm,
It's really interesting to look at all of these things, but we have to be very, very important how we use those differences to influence our work on other things.
mm,
Because
Yeah.
we don't work with, for the most part, we don't work with outliers. We work with people who are way closer, like right here in the middle of that bell curve is what we're typically work with, not these ones on the way, way on the outside edge.
makes sense. Yeah. Danny, did you have anything on that?
I do have a follow up there. So, what is the important? How do I phrase this? What are some of the things that you're extracting from the outliers and then translating or transferring into more of this typical population? Is it
Yeah.
to build a better reference? Is it to understand, what these anomalies are? Or is it to just simply have an appreciation for? Like, I think that's something I actually get hung up on a little bit myself is, particularly in this conversation of sprinting, we were looking at Gout's feet for hour and a half the other night in slow motion. And we kind of came to this point of, well, this is an extreme outlier. So how does this now correspond to 16-year-old, youth female soccer athletes? Right. And
Mhm.
so
That
how do you kind of connect those?
and some of that's like we're trying to understand what causes that. So like that step length, like what caused that step length and what can we understand about that process that would then transfer over to that soccer player? You
Yeah,
know?
I think it gives you an understanding of the boundaries of your system, like what is possible on one end. So there's the edge, and that's one edge, and here's another edge, and it's way over here.
Hmm.
And we know that all the people that we work with are somewhere between these two edges. But it's important to understand where the edges are. And then we can start to, okay, this person is closer to this edge than they are to this edge. They may not be gout, but they move kind of like gout in ways like these types of things. They're really super stiff and blah, 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 and, really elastic and really, really front side. And okay, so you have something on the edge that you can compare it to. So there's some lessons on that edge. And there's on the other edge, let's say you've got Ben Johnson, right? The man of the infamous 550-pound squat or whatever. And he's on that end. And he's a force producing machine. And he's not. He's also super duper elastic too, by the way. But let's say he didn't have all this elasticity that a guy like Gout had, and all he had was this incredible maximum strength capacity. That gives you another way to do things. So when we're looking at things, and that's kind of what we do, right? You we better understand a thing by comparing it to another thing. That's
Mhm,
all. That's how we understand the world. So it's when you've got that's what we use Gout for. We don't say, okay, Gout's feet does this. So that's okay for everybody else's feet to do this.
Right.
mhm,
Or we want somebody else's feet to do this. It's Gout's feet and they do this. And then as when we're watching this, and I'm sure you guys do this, part of our job when we are watching is not just to say, he's really fast or she's really fast. And all of these things contribute to that person being really fast. Some of them may not contribute. So when you look at Gout's feet, for example, the question we ask ourselves is this problematic?
mm,
And if it is a problem, why is it a problem? And then once we understand, or once we've figured out, or once we've kind of done the work to better understand maybe why it is a problem, maybe then we can write a little bit of a thought experiment about the strategy that we might put in place to improve upon that.
mm,
And through that process, that helps inform our work with other athletes. So we look at Gout and we spend 90 minutes looking at his feet. and we say, all right, we think it's a problem. Why is it a problem? Okay, we list all of the things why it could be potentially problematic. Okay, and that gives us now a pathway into better understanding some of the strategies we might put in place. And I think that is a really, really good, good way to learn from outliers. Say, and once again, I talked too long and I forgot your question. So
Oh,
I'm hoping I
that was
answered something.
fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I guess to kind of tie this back to some of the things that we opened with too, right? Like a part of this coaching acumen, coaching eye, professionalism is simply just genuine experience, a bandwidth of reference, understanding where these boundaries or edges are as you described it. And then when we look to this contemporary world of human performance, we're in this obsessive automation phase and everything trying to become predictive and the influences of AI and all these other things. But what you just described right there is a perfect example of the artistry of perspective, inference, understanding, discretion, and so on and so forth. And I think like, we almost always work it back to these same finality points, but everybody always wants to have this cookie cutter, templated answer for everything. And between how you described the quadrants to how you were describing that right there, both of those are perfect illustrations of not just it depends, which is always a cop out, but
Yeah.
the it's the infusion of all these different factors and then your expertise or experience in being able to discern how these things may or may not be problematic or advantageous or so on and so forth, right? So I think it's excellent.
The so in what I do, obviously, I'm integrated very deeply into the therapy space because
Mhm.
at the level that I work in the sport that I work in, the quality of movement is so much influenced by the quality. And let's say the outcome of the movement is so influenced by the quality of the movement. And I think for the most part, like the best therapists can really influence the quality of movement better than coaches can through their work. So what do therapy like when I've worked with thousands of therapists now over the course of time. And of those thousands, I might, there's probably more than this, but let's say there's six. There's six really good ones. And I look at what the commonalities are between those six. And that's kind of what we do, right? When we look at anything to try to figure out why something's working, we're looking at all the people who do that well, and then we look at the commonalities between those things. And all of those six people do work in very, very different ways.
Mhm.
Very different ways. But they can get to the same outcome, which is for me, I want a better quality movement. I want this to look and feel better. And there's six people that do that really, 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 really well. And what are the commonalities? It's not in the component parts in that system. It's not in the things that they do. It's in the strategies, the patterns, and the purpose that they put in place. I guess of those things, right? And it it just reminds me, Danny, of what you said there about of it's not about you want okay, let's give another example here of watching film. You said you took 90 minutes and watching film, and you saw some things, and Chris probably saw some things, and Les saw some things. I don't know who else was there, but all of you guys probably saw different things in different ways. We've talked about this a lot. Like you've sent me film in the past, and I've told you what I've seen, and that's often different than what you've seen. In fact, it's almost always different than what you've seen. And I've done the same thing. Like I'll take film of stuff, and if I can't figure it out, I'll send it out to people. And sometimes I just think something's really interesting, and I'll send that out to people. Hey, what do you think of this? And I'll send it typically out to like 8, 10, 12 people. And you know where this is going. And
Mhm.
probably if you're listening to this, you know where this is going. I get 8, 10, or 12 different opinions on what's happening from 8, 10, 12 really, really smart people. Why? Because they are looking at the component parts of this system.
Yeah.
Now, if they went and coached these people, then they may get to the same outcome, but in very, very different ways. We're all seeing different things because, and it goes kind of back to what I was saying before, right? Like we, as complex adaptive systems, have evolved from a prior condition. We have a history. We have a subjectiveness to ourselves. Like all of the history that we have, all of the people that I have looked, that I have watched, that I have observed, all the video that I've looked at, gives me this today. This brings me to what I see. And that's very different from Danny. That's very different from Les. And it's very different from all of these other people that I send things to. And I feel like that's really important to understand when we're observing movement and trying to improve movement. There isn't one way to do things. There never is in complexity. That doesn't mean that we don't go through the process to try to figure out what we're seeing. It doesn't mean that we don't have conversations with others, because others will see things that maybe we haven't seen yet, that we haven't been able to understand yet. But all of this, like complexity, is subjective in nature. It's relative, right? Based upon, like, if I sent Nicole, maybe Nicole's not a good, let's use Triana instead. Les's wife.
She knows nothing about anything.
If I sent her a video of Gout Gout, she's going to look at Gout Gout and say, that looks good. Like that's like that, and that'll be about her feedback. She won't have much feedback because she doesn't have a prior history. She hasn't evolved from anything where she's done this before. So this is a very simple system for her. And if I sent it to Dan, who's got 50 years of prior history, he's going to give you a laundry list of crap. You know what I mean? And if you're not ready for that laundry list of crap, then it looks like, you know what, he's over complexifying this. No, he's just at a different level than you. Complexity is subjective. It's relative. It's not complex to him. All of this big laundry list of things that he's seeing, that's just where he's at today based upon his history. Where if you said it to Triana, she says, his knees are pretty high. Okay, good. You know what I mean? That's we need to appreciate that. That it's, we're all in different places. And we're all coaching people who are in different places to do different things in different ways. It's complexity upon complexity upon complexity, interacting with complexity. And that has to be a starting point. Because, like, if you ignore that, and this is typically what we do, right? You guys have seen there's a famous cartoon of this, it's a road. And there's a road or a path, and it goes to this sign. And one sign says, and I think at the top it says answers. And there's a bunch of people on the road, and they're all lined up. And it says on the top of the sign, it says answers. And one arrow goes to the left, and it says simple but wrong. And all of the people are going that way. And then the other arrow that goes right says complex but right. And there's like one or two people going on that path, because that's kind of what we want. We want simplicity, even when it's wrong. And that goes back to our conversation less when we're talking about when we go into teams, right? They want simple wrong answers rather than complex right answers. We continue to treat complex systems as if they were simple. We assume that parts are independent, causes are linear, outcomes are predictable, but this is not how living systems work. It's not how complexity works.